Brittany.
Thank you.
So did you have a nice holiday?
I did. I have my nugget home from school today. He has been sick. But we did. It was our first Christmas getting to experience it through their eyes. So it was a lot of fun.
Cool.
It was a very different Christmas than we've ever had. So.
Yeah.
Well, I'm missing Ashley and I can't get a hold of her. So I've recorded it and I'm not sure where she is right now. But for the sake of time, I think we'll get going and start if that's okay with everybody. And Dr. Fox, I know you'd put a poll in the chat. Do you want us to do that a little later, or do you want us to do that? Start with that.
If you want to kick it off, didn't you have some instructions? And then once my presentation starts, we'll go to that first.
That sounds perfect. All right. So I'm going to start my show real quick. Okay, I just wanted to make sure that my screen is in full mode. Can y'all see it like the full screen? Great. Okay, good deal. So awesome. Well, and can you see it typing as I talk? This is a new feature.
Oh, wait, we can.
Okay.
Weird.
Great. All right. Well, that's different. So I will just go with it. So thank you all for joining us this morning. This is our new agent orientation, the volunteer development training. It's a little different. We're going to pace it over the course of 6 weeks. We've got some literature that we're going to look at. We've got presentations every Friday. We're going to have some reflection as well. And we are going to work together on drafting a volunteer development plan. So a little different than we've done in the past, but you can thank Dr. Fox for her expertise, and I know that she's transitioning out, but she was definitely helped kind of put together just a new and innovative approach to our volunteer development training. So before we jump into the session today, I wanted to do a little icebreaker. If y'all will bear with me, is everybody okay with a little icebreaker? Does everybody feel like we should break the break?
Yeah.
Okay, good deal. Yeah. So, y'all know I like some technology. So I have this fun one that I've done before that is always a hit. And so we're going to play Wheel of Names and we're going to get to know each other a little bit more. And so I am going to spin the wheel and ask y'all some questions, and I'll share them in the chat. Do you have them? I don't know if y'all are experiencing this, but my computer is going a little slow today, so I'm going to pull up my conversation here. So the questions that we're going to ask, or I'm going to ask, I want you to answer when I spin the wheel, and if this wheel draws your name, tell us your full name, so your first and the last name. I know it's important to get to know people to actually pronounce their name correctly. And some of you have very unique names, so if you could do that for me, that would be wonderful. Your title within Louisiana 4-H, how long you've been working with 4-H, and a New Year's resolution, if you want to share it. If you don't want to share that New Year's resolution, a place that you want to travel and what you're hoping to get this week. And I'll share that in the chat so you have it just in case you need to remember. All right, so are you guys ready to play Wheel of Names? Y'all think you got it? Okay, great. All right, Megan Owens, you're up first.
Okay. Well, my name is Megan Martin. Owens is my middle name, or my maiden name. I'm not sure how Owens got in the middle of all my name with LSU Ag, but it did. So, but I'm Megan Martin. I am the 4-H agent in Bienville Parish, which is like Arcadia area between Shreveport and Monroe. And I've been working with 4-H since the middle of September. But I was a lead volunteer in Lincoln Parish, which is like Ruston area, for about 3 years with the Junior Leader Program. So, but I've been officially with 4-H since September. And a New Year's resolution of mine is just to slow down and take time for me and my family. My oldest is a sophomore in college, and my youngest will graduate from high school this year. So I'm fixing to be an empty nester. So I just want to just take time for them and just, spend as much time with them as I can. And something I hope to get out of this training, I've been an actual volunteer, so I hope to get some insight on how to find a volunteer, such as myself. Just recruitment, I guess, is my main thing. I have a couple of solid volunteers here, but it always falls back on these 3 or 4. And so I just want to be able to find a way that I can rein in some other ones.
Thank you, Megan. And I'm sorry I said Owens and not Martin. I don't know what I was doing there, but all right.
No, you're good. I'm not sure how Owens got connected with me officially, but it's good. It's all good.
All right, I'm going to spin again. All right, Dr. Fox, you're up.
Sorry about that. My name is Janet Fox. I'm the department head for the Louisiana 4-H Youth Development Department. I've actually been working in Louisiana for about 17 years, and I've lost track about how long I've been working for 4-H. But prior to Louisiana, I started out in Mississippi as a 4-H agent and then became a regional person in Nebraska. So over 30 years. I think really it's 40, but we won't count those years. And I, because of COVID, want to travel someplace. So I will share that my dream of dreams is either to go back to Ireland and explore just a little bit of the west coast of Ireland, or the Tasmania and Australia and sort of that neck of the woods. So, and then what do I hope to get out of the training? I really hope for y'all that you have a firm foundation in volunteer development, and I really hope that you will embrace volunteers. I started out in a county in Mississippi, and my volunteers were my coworkers, and they were actually the people that helped onboard me and support me. And so I hope that you will leave this training with the viewpoint that volunteers are here to really enhance the 4-H program, and that you're a steward of the program, and you're all a big team. So that's what I hope you get out of training. And if you get that out of training, it'll make you very, very happy.
Awesome. Thanks so much. All right. And our next introduction. Gonna be Sarah.
So my name is Sarah Rodrigue. I'm a grad assistant with 4-H, so I'm working with Miss Megan. This is my first week, but altogether I have been. I was a student worker, started my freshman year, and so I've been with 4-H working. This will probably be my 4th year. So, but I'm excited. And places I would like to travel, I really want to go to Alaska one day. I heard it's pretty, and I just want to see that scenery and just really explore all of US, but that's really one of my main. As far as what I hope to get out of this training, just learn anything. I'm up for new things to learn. I hope to be an agent one day, so this is really neat for me to kind of sit in on, and really just get a grasp of everything. So thanks for having me.
Awesome. Thanks, Sarah. Okay, our next introduction. Alicia.
Good morning, everyone. Can y'all hear me? Good morning. Can y'all hear me?
Yes.
I can.
Okay. Well, my full name is Alicia Okoro. I am the 4-H agent in Orleans Parish. I have been with LSU Ag Center since last February. I started the month before we went out on COVID in March. So I still consider myself new. Considering we're working remotely, so I've been kind of having to feel my way through a lot. I don't really have a New Year's resolution, but a place I would like to travel back to is to Nigeria, because that's where my husband is from, and I've only had the opportunity to visit once, and that was about 11 or 12 years ago. So I keep in touch with my in-laws. We get along really good, but it would be nice to see them again. What am I hoping to get out of this training? Well, as I stated, I do work in Orleans Parish, and COVID has hit our parish really hard. So just getting some information on recruitment during COVID, because this starting today, they went back completely virtual again. Agents are not allowed in the building, so it's been really hard. So if I could get some information or some assistance on that, I would really appreciate it.
Awesome. Thank you, Alicia. So next.
Hi, can everyone hear me?
Yes.
Okay, good deal. So my name is Grant Rabily. My full name is Grant Thomas Rabily. February 17th will be my 1-year anniversary with the Ag Center. Everybody knows it's been a really challenging year, but it's also been, I think, a good year as a new agent to learn, because if you can get through this year, at least that's what Miss Esther says. If you can get through this year, then you can get through any year with 4-H. So with that being said, I am most looking forward to getting out of this training how to kind of rebuild our volunteer program. We have a lot of, I think, as most programs, older volunteers. So how to build on the program that we have, how to show appreciation or more appreciation and recognition to the volunteers that we already have, and then how to kind of possibly like line up, like, I don't know, if there's a way to say we have a volunteer that's been doing this for years, how to kind of set up a protege, for a lack of a better word, under that existing volunteer that'll step into those shoes in, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 years from now, when that older volunteer retires, for lack of a better word. Because of a lot of our volunteers are volunteers, but they do a lot, and it's almost a second job to some of them. I know our shooting sports volunteers are extremely committed. Our livestock volunteers are committed, and they have been for, one of our volunteers has been with 4-H for 27 years now in Evalls Parish. So it's kind of scary because we don't want Miss Carolyn to leave, but at some point she will. And so how do I, as an agent, make sure that we have somebody to follow in those footsteps? And then I guess I'll say where I want to travel. So I really, really, really want to go to Hawaii as soon as all this Corona stuff clears up. I was supposed to go last summer, and I didn't, or I couldn't because of COVID. So I'm hoping that I can reschedule that trip and go in the near future. So I think that's everything. Unless if I missed something, Megan, please let me know.
Well, that was perfect. Thank you. All right, and Brittany, I'll spin the wheel for you so you get a spin, but you are our last introduction.
Okay, hi, I'm Brittany Hesser. I started working with 4-H when I was, I think, a sophomore in college. I started working there in the state office with Miss Tanya Joie. I was working with her on military partnerships grant, and then I started working as a teacher when I graduated. I was a teacher for 3 years here in East Baton Rouge Parish. I taught middle school science, and COVID hit, and it became a very difficult job, so I started looking for something else. And I have done 4-H since I could remember. It was always the extracurricular that I participated in. So it just felt like a very natural fit, and I was really excited when I got the position. So I work here in not here. I live in Livingston Parish, but I work in East Baton Rouge Parish. And let me see. I got my questions right here on my phone, so I can make sure I keep up. New Year's resolution. My husband and I both became foster parents in September, and so we have had 2 very precious little children in our house since then. And my New Year's resolution is to remember to look for patience and grace in everything that there is, because some days it's very hard, especially these last couple of days when somebody has been sick and can't go to school. So just remembering to have patience. And I think that translates into everything that I do, especially working with kids, not just my own. So that is my New Year's resolution, is to find patience and grace.
Perfect. Thank you so much for that. And I guess I'll do a brief introduction too. I didn't put myself in the wheel, but y'all know my name now. I'm Megan Franks. I've been with 4-H for just under a year and a half now. I've thoroughly enjoyed it. And my New Year's resolution, do I have one? I don't really have one New Year's resolution, but the place I want to travel and why, there's a mountain range in southern Quebec that I haven't been to in a while. Not many people know this. It's just outside of Montreal. And so at one point I'd like to go there and run up those mountains, when I'm actually able to travel. And what I hope is what you all have expressed already, is that we can help you build this foundation for your volunteer development program. And also, a number of the things that you talked about are the things that we're going to stress throughout this training. So the succession plans that was mentioned, helping with volunteer recruitment, we're talking about that, enabling or allowing our volunteers to assume leadership roles. So many of these things were mentioned, recognition as well. So hopefully you'll leave here with a lot of tools that you can use within your programs. And if you didn't get everything you need, you can provide the feedback where we can improve this program in the future. That being said, I'm going to go back to my slides and just do a brief introduction of today before Dr. Fox shares her wisdom with us this morning. So why volunteer development? So we know as agents, many of you, that volunteer development is essential. So we find that we're spending a lot more time working with our volunteers as volunteer managers and less time with our actual program itself. And so while county extension agents are responsible for the entire program, it's often the volunteers are the ones that are actually leading a lot of our initiatives and working directly with our youth. And in order to make them build these programs that are effective, we really need to give them the skills and tools that they need to help us grow our program. And as you'll know, the volunteer development training, it has a superhero theme. And so this was something that I inherited, but I think it's really, really unique and it's innovative to explain. And so for every superhero that's on this screen right now actually has a volunteer origin story. And so if you think about, you know, Batman or Spider-Man, or even for those of you that know Buffy the Vampire Slayer, anybody here want to raise their hand and say they were a Buffy fan? I was, okay. But you'll see that these superheroes, they had their everyday, studies or school or job, but then the evenings, they were really dedicated to making their communities or their countries a better place, a safer place for others. And they were very dedicated, to that volunteer role. Often you'd see Buffy, she would be training, extensively for, her role in saving, her community, making it safer. So I thought that was somebody's commented. So a very, kind of unique way of looking at volunteer development. And thank you, Megan, as well. Yes, I was a major Buffy fan back in the day. All right, so with volunteer new agent training, volunteer development, it has a little bit different. As you've seen, we're going to have sessions every Friday. We'll have a guest speaker that'll come in and talk about that specific topic. And then what we're going to do is we're going to read an article together, reflect on that article. It's going to be related to that topic, and we're going to work on our volunteer development plan. Now, each of the sessions that we're going to talk about is going to follow that core component of Isotope. So y'all have been getting multiple emails from me, and I've included a link to some foundational literature on Isotope. So I'm assuming everybody's read it and they're very excited to talk about it today. But as we're reading that material, the Boyce article, you'll see that those foundational components, the identification, the selection, orientation and training, utilization, recognition, evaluation, they were discussed within that article. And then talking about just the importance of each one and what each one entails. And so as we go through these next 6 weeks, we're really going to dive more further into each of these elements and what they are in the foundational literature, what they were designed to be. Because some of the material, as you might, and hopefully we talk about today, we might have missed some of the core components of those different components of Isotope throughout the years. And so we'll get to talk about those today. So every week, we're going to read an article on volunteer development. We're going to participate in this Friday training session. I'm going to give you a snapshot volunteer development plan. And so you're going to start drafting each section week after week, and you'll get to go back and revise as we, learn more, have more speakers and read more articles. And then at the end of each of these weeks, you're going to upload that volunteer development plan, the component you worked on. You write a reflection, and then I'm going to provide feedback on that. So if this is a lot, it's really, I'll send it out in email. It's really not as much as it looks like. The articles, were majority of the ones we're going to read are from the Journal of Extension, which are, if you're familiar with it, typically shorter, but very research heavy. So a lot of times it's very clear in the results what it was, what the research found. And so those are ones that we're going to probably dive into the most throughout these 6 weeks. And then with the reflection component, so when we talk about the articles, we're going to follow the same format. It's very simple. And if you've done any of the volunteer development training throughout the summer, I always have the very simple questions just to try to get you to think and talk about, what it was that you learned from that experience or from that article. So what stood out from you? What did you learn that you did not know before? And well, how are you going to use this information in developing your program in the future? All right, so does anybody have any questions? And we're going to revisit the weekly tasks after Dr. Fox blessed us with her knowledge about isochurn and introduction to volunteer development and program needs. But does anybody have any questions before we go on?
I do, Megan. This is great. So next, and I don't know if this is well, I'll just go ahead. Next Friday, so my livestock show starts next Thursday, and it goes Thursday, Friday, and Saturday. Is there a makeup if we miss one of the trainings, or how does that work in term? I mean,
That was one of the reasons that I sent that email again, and I just said, if you have because I've gotten that from some of the regional coordinators. So if there's a conflict because of livestock shows, please email me and let me know. There was a date on the calendar where I thought we were going to get conflict, but nobody's told me anything yet. So Grant, if you could, send me that date.
And the only conflict I have will be the next Friday. I have every other Friday to clear for this, so I just, there was no way around my show,
Yeah, that's right. I get it. Yeah, send that to me and we'll kind of work with you because there's some things that are starting to come up now, and we just want to make sure we're able to.
Okay.
Right. All right. Great. Thanks.
Okay. Good deal. Thank you.
I appreciate you for telling me. All right, Dr. Fox, so you're up next. Do you want to share your screen?
Yes, I'll definitely share the screen. What I'd like to do is invite people to go to menti.com and click on I'm going to present, and click on the code, which is 32545354-2, and then just start to answer that question about why should you involve volunteers in your 4-H program. And you actually have the ability to do 5 different answers. So we will see once the first person is on and their answers, this will develop a word cloud.
Hey, Dr. Fox, it's telling me that code doesn't work.
52.
I'm having that same problem. I'm putting it in and it won't accept it. It says it cannot be found.
Yeah.
So,
Mine worked for me twice. Do you have to do the spaces? You might have to keep the spaces. Try it.
Is it the code? Is it the code that's written in the chat?
I would go with the code that's on the screen. If you can see that code, it's 32, not 52, 32, 53, 54, 2.
Okay, give me one second.
I just typed it in, and it was, okay, the code that's on the screen is not the right code.
The code that's on the screen let me in. The one that's in the chat did not.
Yes.
The numbers are different. Instead of 53, it's 35. So it should be 53.
Okay, very good. Thank y'all for helping to solve that problem. So it looks like we have 4 people that have answered. Waiting on that 5th person. And again, if you're having issues, I totally understand. Thank y'all for trying, and we have our 5. So actually, those are very similar to usually the more responses something gets, it's the biggest. And so I love the fact that they are vital to the program is the one that has more responses than just about anything else. Although we're very, very close on all of the answers. So would y'all like to share why you put something up there and what that means? So we have knowledge, expertise, build a program, can't do it alone, commitment, diversity, development, growth, support, and skills. Who would like to just share one of their answers and why they think it's important to involve volunteers?
So I put that they are vital to the program because we've seen, and I think we've probably all seen that while times change and people come and go, even agents come and go, our volunteers remain the same. And with that being said, they are the basis of most of our programs, and they've outlasted times and people changes, and they're extremely vital because they keep the wheel turning when maybe there's an agent not there, or when an agent is even sick, or they do play a really vital role in our program. So
Yeah, in 2 of the 3 counties I was in Mississippi, they had the institutional knowledge about the 4-H program. It wasn't the office. So that's just an aspect of what you shared, Grant. So one other person who would like to share.
Well,
I can share. Oh, go ahead, Megan.
We'll take you.
I only was able to put support in because I hit enter and it threw me out. So, but they're our main support. We couldn't do this program without our volunteers.
Very good. And thank you. Alicia, were you the other person?
Yep, I was. I put commitment, but I'm also gearing towards knowledge, just because I have a chef club and my volunteer who does the cooking portion of it is very helpful and very knowledgeable. So I do the lessons and she do the cooking part, and there's no way I could ever do that by myself. So he is very important to that program.
It is. And they bring in knowledge that really enhances the program overall. And I had people walk in my door in Starkville. Somebody wanted to start a show choir, so we did a show choir. I could have never done a show choir, but she came in and was reputable, and we talked about it and made plans, and it was bigger than I thought it was going to be. So we had a junior high and a high school show choir for a couple years while she was in graduate school. So very lucky for that. So we have one more question, and hopefully it will let me get to that. I might have to exit screen. There we go. Get back in. So let's see if this will work. And so can you see that other, why do people volunteer? Can you see the other mentee?
Yes, ma'am.
And remember, look at the code on the computer screen versus in the chat. So why do people volunteer? Okay, waiting on a couple more people, but they want to give back is so far the area or that we have mentioned more. But what I like about this is there's lots of good reasons, and no reason is necessarily more than another. So passion, learning new skills, they have a stake in the 4-H program, they're committed. Again, they want to give back, they want to spend time with their child or children because they enjoy working with children, sharing their knowledge, helping others, actually learning new skills, making connections, and helps their self-worth and to make changes. So very, very good. A person or two want to share a background on their answer?
This is Megan in Bienville. I put spending time with your own child, because that's how I chose as a volunteer. Both of my children were involved in 4-H. And so I decided that if I was going to spend any time with my kids when they were in high school, that I was going to need to volunteer for the 4-H program. So that's how that was the main one for me. And I put give back as well, because I had some incredible agents and volunteers that poured into me when I was in school, and so it was kind of my pay it back, or my pay it forward, or whatever. Because if I can make a difference in a child, like my 4-H agent made a difference in my life, then that's what we're here for. So
Yes. A lot of times all you have to do is ask, because they do want that opportunity. Anyone else want to share?
I said passion. One of the reasons that I continued to work with 4-H as a school leader, and then my husband and I also became certified shooting sports coaches. We just loved what we did. The program gave us so much. I don't think that I would have been in the spot that I'm in today if I had not had really good volunteers and people who had spent time in 4-H, and I wanted to give back. And my husband is really passionate about teaching youth how to be safe with firearms, and he was passionate about it. That was what he did. That was what he loved. And when that ended for him, he didn't know what to do with himself. So I think that passion and wanting to just continue doing what you love and pass that on to somebody else who's going to love it just as much is really fulfilling. And it feels really nice to be able to give back to somebody or to a program that gave so much to us. So,
Yeah. And so a lot of reasons all in one experience. So that's very good. And it wasn't necessarily stated, but oftentimes this gives you the opportunity to volunteer as a family. And so that's another thing to consider. Sometimes when you get one member of the family, you get more than one member of the family. So that's always a nice bonus for volunteering. So this will provide the overview, kind of get your mind thinking about sort of the why we need volunteers in the program. A lot of times we need to think about the philosophy of why we need volunteers and then go with that. So I'm going to now transition to the PowerPoint presentation. There we go. We're going to from the beginning. So today I'd like to just share with you just an overview of Volunteer Management 101. So in today's workshop outline, we're going to talk about understanding volunteers and volunteering, which we got a head start on, and then setting up a system. And we're going to use the Isotope Model, which Megan has provided for you in the orientation part of this seminar, and we're going to talk about the different stages of the Isotope Model and setting up a volunteer system. So we answered the first question, why should you involve volunteers in the 4-H program? And I think it's really critical that you have that mindset that volunteers add a lot of value to your program, and there's a lot of benefits to involving them in the 4-H youth development program. And then we talked about why people volunteer. And so that's an important thing as we talk about setting up our volunteer program and talking about recruitment. It's often really important that a volunteer arrangement is reciprocal. So they get something out of the volunteer experience, and the program, get a lot out as well. So we need to think about that motivation, particularly when we go to recognize, utilize, and recruit those volunteers. And so these are just a few of the ones that I came up with. You really came up with all of those. Meet new people, be a role model for their children or children to fill a personal void because it's tradition, and to influence others because they care about the program. And then on the flip side, oftentimes we think it's hard to get people involved, but we need to kind of look at it from their perspective. So getting people to volunteer, we need to show them the benefit. We need to talk about it depending on who they are and where they're coming from. Maybe they need job experience. Maybe they need connections, particularly anybody that wants to work with youth or be a teacher, or hone some skills that might be industry-based that they could share with someone. It also builds their resume and socialization, getting to know particularly those individuals that might be new in a community, that want to get to know the community and be the people in it. Also think about personal ties to the cause. Oftentimes we have those passions, as y'all talked about earlier, that we want to get people involved in. And so this is actually research on engaging young people. And so this is what young people are looking to volunteer. And then there's another work that talks about just volunteers in general, and that's Volunteer Management 101 by John Lip. And to get volunteers to volunteer, they want meaningful work. Something that we don't understand sometimes, or really think about, is we have a golden opportunity to give a person the opportunity to engage in meaningful work, to make a difference. And there's all sorts of benefits from volunteering. We need to understand that when volunteers can volunteer, it's reasonable commitments. And we'll talk about that when we talk about the job description. We want to let them know that it is flexible if there's something that they have to do. There's certain programs like shooting sports that there is not as much flexibility because of risk that we need to talk about, but then in some programs there is flexibility, and we're there just to help them to be successful. And then it is time well spent, and they learn about the community as they're volunteering. And we need to understand their motivations. So McClendon talked about 3 motivations: power-oriented, social or affiliation-oriented, and achievement-oriented. And so we need to, as we visit with those individuals, we need to figure out, like, what is their motivation, and that way, as we're recruiting and engaging those volunteers, we can be a little bit more successful. So tell me, and write in the chat, because I know you've probably heard it if you've been an agent for any length of time, why don't people volunteer? And Megan, since I have the full screen on the PowerPoint, can I get you to read the chat for me? So reasons volunteers don't volunteer.
Yeah, I got the chat. No problem.
Thank you.
They don't have time.
Probably.
Alicia, thank you.
Number one answer, probably.
Yeah. Grant also said time. Megan said they've never been asked, which is also a good one. Grant said commitment, and hopefully he can explain if he means like too much of a commitment or don't want to make the commitment. So, or maybe he means both. Looks like Ashley's typing, Grant is typing. Both. He says both. Great.
Okay.
Sarah was typing and Ashley was typing. Ashley says resources. They
Okay.
don't have a car or a computer,
Yeah.
etc. That's a very good one.
Mhm.
Sarah says they just don't know how to get involved and they're scared to ask what they can help with. Good. Well, great. Megan says do not know how to do the job. Alicia says they don't know they're needed. Brittany says they don't want to commit the time. There's all very good.
Yeah, very good. So y'all are a sharp group, of course, because we hired you, but this is another sort of list of reasons, but they're unaware, and you basically got all of those answers correct. Being unaware of the opportunity, not knowing, and so, I'll say the solution is not only making it easier to volunteer for your 4-H program, which I know could be a challenge during these times, and then also allowing other people to be stewards of your program. Oftentimes if I'm recruiting one person, or if I'm the person solely recruiting volunteers for the 4-H program, I can reach, someone told me, 300 people effectively. Well, if I empower other people to, care about the 4-H program and know that we need a volunteer in this particular area, they can help with the recruitment. And so the net is spread wider. Lack of volunteer role models and fear of volunteering are two reasons that actually I didn't 100% understand until, well, not my husband. I grew up in a very active volunteer family. My parents pretty much volunteered for anything we were involved in, plus the Red Cross. And my husband's family did not volunteer. And so they did not see volunteering. It wasn't even in their view that they saw that, why would you volunteer? And then also that fear. Somebody said the not having the skills or the confidence maybe to volunteer. Lack of time is a big one, and they believe they don't possess the appropriate skills. So a lot of different reasons, plus some additional reasons that you came up with. And so again, we have to understand this concept of why people don't volunteer when we are trying to engage them in our program. And so as you look at that, one or two people tell me, what can you do to alleviate some of those reasons?
You have to let them know that skills are not needed, that we'll teach you how to do what we need you to do.
Hey,
You know what I mean?
yeah, I think that's very important. Anything else? That was a good one.
As far as lack of time, just making them aware that it's not as time consuming as they may think it is. Because and it just depends on that person in the programming. Sometimes you do need a volunteer where they have a lot to do. And then sometimes you may utilize a volunteer in a different way where you're not using up a whole lot of their time. So if they know that there's different things that they can do, that they don't need to put forth a whole lot of time, then they may be more willing to volunteer.
Yeah. And I will say, as you think about that fear of volunteering, it's really important, or the lack of knowledge, it's important to know that the word volunteer or volunteering is really a white, female, middle-class term. And so when you're looking to diversify the volunteer pool, words like, can you help? So sometimes using the word volunteer scares someone off. And so using, can you help me with this? And it's a lot easier to turn down somebody that wants you to volunteer versus somebody that wants you to help out. Who doesn't want to help out somebody else? So please keep that in mind as you're thinking about your program and getting the support that you need for that program. Okay, so that was sort of like the introduction to get us in the right mindset. And now we're going to talk about setting up a volunteer system. And this shouldn't be foreign to you. It's Boyce, and he was actually associated with National Cooperative Extension, and we call it the Isotope Model. Now, the S was added later on. I'm not really going to go over that, but I feel like supervision and utilization are tied together, and so a lot of what I would have had to said in supervision was utilization. So you'll see isotour without the S, and then sometimes you'll see isotours. And I just wanted y'all to know this, so when you go to a national meeting or when you talk to a fellow colleague and they say isotour, you know what they're talking about. Or if they say isotours, you're not confused. So we start out by identification and the recruitment of those volunteers. We have selection and screening, orientation, training, utilization in a plan of how to utilize those volunteers, recognition, evaluation, and then again, I'm going to tie supervision into utilization. So let's start out with setting up this volunteer program, and you need to begin with a need in mind. So the end in mind of where do you want your 4-H program to be? What are the needs of 4-H? Where are the gaps? So do you have a shooting sports program? Do you have, is there a particular area of the parish that you don't have an active 4-H club? So we used to call it a Mississippi Expansion and Review Committee. And so we brought together a group of volunteers from across the county, or in this case, a parish, and we would look at the 4-H program and look at the data and say, okay, we need these communities aren't represented, what can we do? Or these program areas are not represented, what do we do? So you really need to figure out what your needs are for your overall 4-H program, and then figure out how those volunteers can address those needs. And as you think about how they can address those needs, you specifically need to think about, so what volunteer positions do we need? What will that volunteer role is? If it's a club leader, do we need a club leader? Do we need an assistant club leader? What sorts of structure do we need? And then look at the current volunteer pool. I thought it was interesting when we started the meeting, I loved how Megan talked about that there's only a few volunteers, and she wanted to expand it in her program. I say a few. She didn't say a few. She said there's 4 or so people that people constantly rely on. And I think that we tend to do that in 4-H. We have those wonderful volunteers that we form close relationships with, that we enjoy being around, which are amazing. But as Grant was saying, look at that plan to expand. How do we revigorate and expand that 4-H program? Because what we don't want to have happen is when someone leaves, the program falls apart. They have all the institutional knowledge, et cetera. And as a 4-H agent, I always had the attitude of, I'm working hard on this 4-H program. When I leave, I don't want it to die with me. And so the way that a program won't die with you is if you have an engaged force of volunteers. And so I personally invest in a program as a steward that's taking care of the program, but ultimately the ownership of that program is really shared. It's not, if I leave, everything will crumble. I mean, I don't think that's anything we should be excited about, ooh, I'm so critical it's going to crumble. No, we need to really share the power, share the impact, and help people feel part of that program and ownership for. And oftentimes I'll hear agents say, well, nobody showed up. Did you do the entire program, or did you engage other people in helping you do the program? Because honestly, I will say those first couple of years when I was a 4-H agent, sometimes the volunteers and who they brought were the only people that showed up for the program, and thank gosh for that. But you know, then it began to build and become strong and grow from there. But a program will grow when people care about it, and it has to be more than you that care about it. So that's where volunteers come in, and youth as well come in. So this is just an infrastructure slide that I feel like you need to have prior to even going into Isotope, and it falls into place with other Isotope areas in that you need to have some kind of program infrastructure. So we have a mission statement. You need to have some position descriptions that you can draw from that can be modified based on, you need some way, an application or some way for a volunteer to sign up, so to speak. You need some promotional materials that'll help recruit volunteers. Of course, we have an enrollment system that you enroll the volunteers in. Some people have handbooks. You need some kind of information that you can provide that volunteer about the program. You really need to have orientation and training. It's done sometimes in Louisiana, it's done face-to-face, one-on-one, or with a school group, or overall. And then the training, you need to provide opportunities based on those needs, and then ongoing recognition within your 4-H program of those volunteers. So as we talk about the Isotope model, we talked about what are the needs, what are the gaps, where can volunteers. So we went over that in terms of what we need to talk about in terms of those volunteers. And with the result of that, then we need to take and we need to develop some position descriptions. And they vary. You'll see a lot of different position descriptions out there, but you really do need a title, you need a description, you need to know if there's any special skills or talents, or if you'll train, the time commitment, the location, and then oftentimes that contact person, who are they responsible for too, so then they know. And I've been in scenarios where people don't know who their 4-H agent is, and that's not it's just they need to know who they contact. And then as we talk about recruitment, and Megan, you know, will go into this further on through the series with the matching game, there's various ways to recruit volunteers. Mass media, if you are having a big event, mass media is a great way to go. It creates awareness. However, if you're expecting a whole bunch of volunteers to come out and volunteer, mass media is not going to get you what you need. It's a good way to create an awareness for that volunteer opportunity. The other method is targeted recruitment. So if you need a project club leader or someone that is skilled in a particular area, or a volunteer role that has special characteristics. So like your foundation, if you're trying to recruit people for your foundation, you kind of look at, okay, do we have representation throughout the community? Do we have somebody that's willing to go out and raise some dollars or have access to people that have dollars? Do we have some people that are good at organizing fundraisers? And so depending on the types of positions that you need to think about how to recruit them. And then Louisiana 4-H really does a lot of this concentric circle or inner circle recruitment, in that we have a lot of our alumni who come back and volunteer, and then we have collaborators, and one of our biggest collaborators is the school system. And so that's, we go to the school, and you know the drill. You go to the principal, or you go to the superintendent, or you just know who the teachers are and recruit from there. But we definitely, most of our recruitment efforts are through that concentric circle or inner circle recruitment method. What are some things that y'all have thought about with recruiting volunteers, whether it's just kind of within the 4-H program or outside the 4-H program? What are some of some ways that you've recruited or been recruited, etc.? And while y'all are thinking, I will say the most unusual recruitment that I've ever had was my youth minister recruited me to do puppets at church. And I love music, but I had never done puppets in my life. And so her line was, God has led me to you to lead the puppets. And so I really had to think about it. I told her, I said, well, God hasn't told me this yet, but let me pray about it. And sure enough, I prayed about it and ended up being the puppet leader for several years. And so, I mean, that was a clever, I don't know. Anyway, that was hard to turn down. What are some of the other things, whether it's in your personal life or 4-H, that you've experienced with recruitment?
Oh, Dr. Cox, this is Grant. Let me take it off. 1 second. Okay, is there still an echo?
No, you're good.
Okay. So I can definitely see how it would be hard to turn down a message from from God per se, but I've seen, like, within 4-H, and not that everything's been really traditional, but there's certain people, and I'm sure all of the agents have seen or witnessed, there's certain people that don't really are not really, say, volunteers in any one thing, but they're always showing up at the office. Hey, what can I do? Is there anything that I can do? Or they're always just coming by to visit,
Mm-hmm.
And those are often people that haven't been reached out to, and they're really dying to be asked, hey, can you come help me, do this? Or would you like to be a shooting sports volunteer? Or, what's something that you're interested in? And a lot of them are scared because well, I don't know a whole lot about livestock, or I don't know a whole lot about junior leaders, or, but they're coming around because they want to be asked, and they're hesitant because they feel like they're not competent to serve in any way for the program. And I said this in a comment on an earlier thing, but we're not limited, and they certainly aren't either. Whether it's starting T-shirts or, just any small thing. But I know that in Evolves, we have a lot of people that just want to stop by and visit, and they don't serve in any role, and they're waiting to be asked. And I've seen that with at least 6 people that have no history of involvement, but they have kids in 4-H, or history in volunteering, but they have, kids in 4-H or grandkids in 4-H, and they're just really wanting to be asked,
Yeah. And I will just say this, I hope she doesn't mind me sharing, but Shannon Waits, I asked her, I did a parish visit early on in my career, probably at least a decade ago, and I noticed that she had really good participation from parents. And so she told me, she said, I observed during those events, like you're talking, whether that's coming to the office or, and she made it a point to recruit, really target certain parents to help recruit for them to be volunteers. And I've seen over the years, and I've met several of her parent volunteers because they've had active 4-H members, and they have enough people for camp. They have enough overnight events because of these parents, and they hold on after their kids graduate, some of them. And so it's been really, really interesting to see that, that this is a little bit different take on targeted recruitment, and that there's no necessarily plan except for maybe overnight chaperone for these volunteers, but they tend to look at those parents that are super active and recruit them because they know they'll show up. And so I think, it's been very successful for them. So it really does go and complement what you shared, Grant, very much.
I think too, and I've learned this even as a teacher, when you do things that kids really love and they get really excited about it, then they go home and they're telling their parent, and their parent is like, oh, well, maybe I could help with this. Like, I needed Hot Wheels tracks for an activity in my classroom, and my kids went home and they were like, Mom, I need Hot Wheels. Can we go get Hot Wheels? And like, things came in really quickly. And so when the kids get really, really, really excited and we're doing awesome things with them, parents sometimes just automatically show up even if we didn't ask for them. So yeah, engaging our kids and knowing our audience helps too. Even with parents that aren't always super involved, I found that parents who I'd never seen once started sending Hot Wheels that week. Or, it was like, it was just kind of weird. That was my first year teaching and it really surprised me. So, yeah.
Well, and I think it is they haven't been asked or they don't know the need. And so that's where communication is so key. And you brought up a good point, Brittany, that made me think about something else, and that with recruitment, the first county I was in, I was looking for a club in a particular area, and I had this boy that was just super involved. And I talked to him. His name was actually King. And I said, King, what do I need to do? I said, I'm trying to get somebody in your community to step up and be a volunteer for a club. He says, oh, my grandmother will do it. Well, his grandmother was the most delightful lady, and she was amazing. And she had so much influence. I mean, it not only it was the community, but it spread. That was one of the best, most active clubs, new clubs that I had, because and all it took was this young man who just went out of his way to learn about 4-H and what 4-H had to offer, and he actually, I didn't have to ask his grandmother. He says, let me ask her and I'll get back with you, Miss Janet. And so sure enough, I mean, he asked her, she said yes, and then I did a home visit and visited with her and kind of helped her along in the process. So those youth are sometimes the best recruiter of volunteers out there. So keep that in mind, particularly with junior leaders or whatever. Sounds like somebody else might want to visit or share.
Dr. Fox, I did have one more thing to say. I have found that when we give, and there's a fine line here, but when we give our volunteers and the people from our community some ownership of the program, they have a higher stake in the program. And a lot of times, current volunteers will recruit new volunteers, and it's because when they feel that they have a stake in the program, their ownership of the program becomes greater, and they want to see more, or they want to see more involvement, or a parent will say, well, I know the perfect person, John Smith, he would love to come and help do this, let me just call him. So I have and just to kind of go with that, we needed a new sound system for our barn for our livestock shows, and I'm not tech savvy or speaker system savvy, and nobody really was currently involved. And one of our parents says, look, this guy that goes to church with us, I know that he would do whatever he could to help. And I mean, he totally, I mean, we've met, and he came to the barn, and he's like, Grant, my kids were in 4-H. They were never really active in 4-H, but when Carolyn called me and told me that y'all needed some help with this, I knew I had to give back, because Carolyn does so much for the parish and for 4-H, and she helped my kids when they were in 4-H, and I just, please don't let this be the only thing that you call me for, so I have found that when our volunteers have some ownership in the program or some stakes in the program, they tend to kind of self-recruit for us,
Yeah, and that's a great example of a need that somebody can address and that wants to address. There's people out there that want to help us, and we just don't know to ask them.
Grant, I have a funny story. This is Megan in Danville. How I got recruited. My child was in junior leaders. Well, I would go and drop her off, and I would sit in the parking lot some days. So one of the other volunteers had like Cokes and cupcakes that she was taking into the building. And I knew her, but I didn't know her like really well or anything. And she came and knocked on my window and said, can I get you to help me take this stuff in? I mean, you're just going to be sitting in your car, right? And I was like, well, yeah. And I was getting my master's at that time. And so I was working on some paper or something. I don't remember. And but she was like, you can do that paper later. I need you to help me carry this stuff in. And so I helped her carry the Cokes or whatever in, and I never left. So she started, so it was another volunteer that that sucked me in. Because every time I was like, well, I need to go do, and she was like, but wait, I need your help doing this. And then, so for several months, she had something for me to do. And then it was like, I'll see you next month. And then before it was all over, I ended up being the lead volunteer for junior leaders, my child's senior year. So it was another volunteer that was like, hey, I need your help. And then I thought that was funny.
Yeah, and it's a simple, I mean, I guess you make a great point, Megan, because it was so simple. Come help me with this. And kind of got sucked in a very good way.
Right. And she used that help word also. It was like, I didn't have time to volunteer because I was in school and I was trying to get my master's and all of that. So, but I had time to help. I didn't have time to volunteer, but I had time to help.
Yeah.
So.
Very good. Somebody else want to say something?
I was just going to say that I think we're all probably familiar with that parent, Megan, that sits in the car and just, they're on their phone or they're doing, their own work. And it's like calling them out sometimes does, encourage them to come. And then you end up gaining a volunteer that would have never otherwise gotten out of the car,
Right.
Yeah. Good deal. Yeah.
Because like I said, I didn't have time to volunteer.
Well, and that's the other thing. Sometimes ask a busy person.
Right.
I'm sorry. I didn't mean to cut you off, Megan. Did you have something else you wanted to say?
No, ma'am.
Okay, awesome. Very good. And so with the recruitment message, and so sometimes the recruitment message is kind of an easy message of come help, that's it, come help, we'll suck you in later. But if you're really formally recruiting a volunteer and just identify that need, what need, how are they going to help the program? How are they going to impact youth? And again, knowing kind of their motivation and why they're there. And so oftentimes this is kind of like bullet points, but it's more like a conversation. I think you first have to get to know someone, and you can't get to know them if they're in the car. And then you kind of get to know them, get to know their interests, get to know why they're there or why they might be interested, and then match that need that you've identified with the volunteer and help them understand, kids will benefit and you'll actually gain knowledge. And if you really like traveling, you'll have there's this great conference at Edenton, Rock Eagle, Georgia, and then provide some contact information. It's going to be formal depending on the type of recruitment you do. If it's face-to-face, you'll just, say, hey, think about it, come back with me, or is this something you'd be interested in? And it shouldn't be so focused on what you need that you're not listening to the volunteer. It's very important to listen to the volunteer. And oftentimes I am not too pushy, but I don't usually take no for an answer. What I'll do is I'll say, I'll hit you up later, I'll touch base at next semester, or if you can't do this, could you do that? And then if they have to turn you down like 3 or 4 times, they feel bad, and so they'll eventually do it. But I will also say that if somebody's not ready to commit, it can also get you in a tight situation if you're depending on them. So make sure it's somebody that you can depend on. And I always started volunteers off with small things sometimes, and then I saw that they'd follow through, and then I, okay, now be in charge of the club kind of thing, unless it was a targeted recruitment and I was trying to start a project club. But I always, when possible, tried to get them involved in different events that we had. And I understand we're in COVID times, and so this is more difficult, depending. I guess for some people that might not have transportation. If they can be online, that might be a good thing. But just get to know their situation and why they would benefit from that volunteer position. And so some things that when we think about the message, make sure it's action oriented, make sure, you can make a difference in the cause and effect. You can create an impact on the lives of young people. Make sure that the information is meaningful to them, that provides a lot of information. And then there's that sense of goal accomplishment. And, here's an example. By getting involved in, the social cause, I know I can't change the world, but I might be able to make a small difference in someone's life. And so having sort of that, you're going to make a difference in somebody's life, or you're going to help the 4-H program have more resources, or you're going to teach somebody this, gun safety, so we won't be grieving a child. They know they know how to operate a gun safely or a firearm. So, and then it makes me feel good to help others. So as we talk about selection, we need to go, and with selection comes screening, as you'll see up there, but it's getting to know the volunteer. There's just one or two agents that do interviews with volunteers, particularly for camp. There's interest sheets that there used to be an interest sheet on the back of the enrollment form for 4-H members, so we could see what the parents were interested in, having some kind of way to sign up through an application. And then Megan, I'm sure, will go more into screening. And then be sure to match the volunteer interest, their time, and their talents to that open volunteer position. And really, you need to place that volunteer as soon as possible. If you wait for more than a month, you're going to lose that volunteer just because they said yes and you don't involve them. Now, if you have a cookery contest, and I know we're in COVID times, but maybe they can judge from a distance that's 2 months away, that's fine. You can recruit them as a judge and then from time to time send them updates. But if you do need to put that volunteer to work right away if possible. And then as we talk about orientation, there's really 3 major parts of an orientation. We need to welcome the new volunteers. Maybe it's getting to know them a little bit better. Maybe it's a formal, this is the team, the 4-H team that runs either junior leaders, or you can get to know and tour the agency, etc., and then acquaint the volunteers with your mission. And so that's really important, because oftentimes if we start with why we're here, and that's positive youth development, some of the issues that might arise that are really not associated with positive youth development can be squelched. They at least have an awareness that, that livestock club is about positive youth development, not about animals, because this is what we're for. The animals are a vehicle to help our youth develop. And so having that mission and making sure those volunteers understand the mission. And then outlining the role, expectation, responsibility, and task. And this can be, like I said, you can have a club leader orientation, or you can have a one-on-one orientation. Then what do you think the benefits of orientation are? So write in the chat what you think the benefits are, and Megan will share with them.
So nothing yet, but I mean, people are probably thinking. Got a bunch of people typing.
Okay.
Megan said letting them know what their role will be.
Right. Very good. Okay.
Got a bunch more typing at the same time. So maybe. Ooh, great. Ashley said expectations for them and us. Very good. Okay. Grant said ease nervousness, giving them some of the tools they will need to be successful. Good. Or to succeed, he said.
Good.
Got a couple typing still. It's a very chatty bunch. It's great. Oh. Still got a couple people type in here, right? Okay, let's, Brittany said it helps take care of the idea of, I don't know what I'm doing here, and helps provide them with a cohort of members who may be starting at the same time. That's really good. Alicia said provide information about the program. Awesome. And Megan said give us scope of the program. So some really good ideas.
Go ahead. I'm sorry, Megan.
No, that's it.
Okay. Very good. So y'all came up with some really good ones. You help increase, actually, what you said, this is research, but this is definitely, y'all came up with some good ones and ones that I really like. So increase confidence, decrease risk. And so oftentimes if they understand sort of the guidelines, the policies, what sorts of things our organization believes in, like, too deep leadership and never being alone with a child, and that would help decrease the risk when they understand that. And that oftentimes takes place in an orientation. It also strengthens the public image that you have, because whenever you go to an organization, they make a first impression. Now, granted, if we're an alumni, but even that, we might go to an organization and had a great experience, but then volunteer in another that might not seem to have everything together. And so it really does, when we do things like this and explain people and set them up for success, it really does help the public understand, because they're going to talk to each other, and they'll get to know 4-H through that other person. And then it improves volunteer retention, because no one likes to start a job and not really understand what's expected of them. And so that is definitely a benefit of orientation. And then training. As we look at the training needs, we need to look at the volunteer descriptions that we have, positions. We need to look at the skills that we currently have. And we also need to look at a range of experiences. Oftentimes we really target those new volunteers, which are so important, but we need to kind of look at a broad stroke of things, and then look at a variety of formal and informal methods that we might use. So we might informally have kind of a coaching session before junior leader meetings, or in the hall, and then we might have some formal trainings. And what's so great, this is actually an area where I think you could offer a lot to volunteers during COVID, because while they're probably sick of online, this provides them the opportunity to have formal training online. And I know Megan has done an amazing job with our agents with that online training, and we have some good resources there as well for volunteers. So I think we're well set in terms of those opportunities on a state level, and you'll want to see on your local level what you want to do. It's important to provide resources. We talked about a handbook earlier. Do you have to have a handbook? You don't have to have a handbook, but oftentimes, if you're going to provide the volunteer with a lot of handouts and a lot of information, it's good to think about putting it in one place, i.e. a handbook or a notebook or something, depending, or having it on the web or whatever. And then it's important that you design ongoing educational opportunities that will help that volunteer grow, and provide the opportunity for them to go beyond the parish to area trainings, as well as national and regional trainings that are provided. That's important to help them, especially for those individuals that are achievement oriented and want to learn more about a particular subject matter, or increase their involvement in the organization. And then make sure that you're defining the needs and determining whether the needs are met. So, we'll talk about evaluation, but as you talk about those volunteers, as you talk about what are their needs and what would they like to, maybe it is in these COVID times learning more about technology. Or maybe it's risk management because they want to make sure that they are more knowledgeable about providing safe environments for youth. So whatever the need is, every parish and program are different and unique, and that's where, you'll have to do some ongoing needs assessment in terms of what training is needed. Then, as we talk about utilizing volunteers, we've really delved into that earlier in a lot of the conversations, but just to invite them to participate. Look at someone invited Megan in to help carry groceries or snacks, and it ended up turning into that she was the junior lead volunteer her daughter's senior year, or child's. I don't know if you said daughter or child. So child senior year. I model the mission, model that we're about youth development and share why that's important and what difference we make. And then really, as you're doing things, connect the activities that you ask people to support, how that's related to the mission. And then define activities in terms of results, help. And so when you do evaluations or when you gather feedback as a result of an activity, make sure that you tell that it shouldn't be something that you just have for your portfolio. You should share it with your volunteers. Hey, did you realize the cookery contest that we did, 80% of the kids learn something or whatever. And so that helps to create some positive organizational talk. And then utilize their time. This is kind of an interesting thing. You'll have the social volunteers that'll want to get there early and socialize, and then you have the volunteers that are on a time schedule. So I would build in a little bit of social time before or after, but really respect the time of the volunteers and spend time with them and respect their time. And then provide recognition, which we're going to talk about a little later on, and resources so they could be happy and have the support that they need. Create high standards, and if you can, look at the processes and eliminate anything that might not be necessary to do, or look at things that you can dovetail together. So, if you have, well, I was going to save it for evaluation, but I was a volunteer leader in Nebraska, and I was a club leader forever and ever, as long as I was there. And then I was a middle management volunteer. But one thing that I think that they did really well is every year they had an end of the year report that volunteers needed to fill out. It was 2 pages front and back. A lot of them were very simple. And it had multiple benefits. One is I reported on our club activities, where, what citizenship or service projects we did, and officer, how many meetings we had, etc. So it was a rundown of what we did the whole year, sort of like our organizational leader report. And then there were 3 questions that were very evaluative in scope. So it was like, did you get the support you needed from our office this year? Yes, no, maybe. And then if no, then what? And then what do you need for us to better support you? And how would you rate your volunteer experience? So very, very brief, but it was 1 paper. It was all together. Both if we think about our organizational leader report and an evaluation. And at one point I had a member of the club that was a challenge. He had some mental illness issues, and he was acting out, and it was really he had become difficult to deal with. And so I said something. I think I filled out the paper, and when they said, "Are you going to volunteer again?" I said, "I don't," I was kind of like, maybe. And the minute it was like the minute I turned that in, I had a phone call. What's up? Don't tell me you're gonna, don't tell me you're gonna leave us. Please don't. You're the people. They used to put so I used to have the middle school kids that sort of that were homeless, sort of. I mean, that didn't have a place to go, and so I used to be their place where if they had a kid interested in 4-H that was, upper elementary or middle school, they used to always send them my way. And I would, of course, take any that they had. So, I mean, my club had grown from just neighborhood kids to a large group of kids. So I filled their needs, and it was a great experience. I mean, it was wonderful, and we got to know some kids that were amazing. But this child was just about to do me in, and during the meetings, and so I don't know. It got better after that. It was like I don't think that they really did anything, but just reinforced that we're here for you. What can we do for you? You're doing a great job. We need you, and that sort of thing. And that was enough to keep me going. And I think, of course, my kids were enough to keep me going as well. But, make sure that as you're utilizing volunteers, you reach out and make sure they're supported. And, if you can dovetail or put together things, and of course, instill that passion. And then as we talk about recognition, and you're going to have a phenomenal presentation in the future about recognizing volunteers. And so I'll just make it brief in terms of make sure that, personalize, make sure and it's easy. You could have pictures or tokens of appreciation. You could make them comfortable with convenient parking or ample resources. You can enhance a gathering place or an inviting hallway. And it's just, some of these are very directed towards the volunteer, and others are just general, making volunteers feel like they are recognized. Now, some of these are not relevant during COVID times, so keep that in mind. But I think the three major headings of personalize, make comfortable, and enhance still involved. And still help out. So, and then the next thing is some principles of recognition, which are just emphasize success rather than failure. And I know when I was a volunteer for PTA, I actually did the book fair, and I wasn't supposed to be the lead on the book fair, but long story short, there were 4 of us, and I was the only one left at the start of the school, and then by December, everybody had moved on. So I was doing something I really didn't know I was doing, what to do, because I was going to learn from these other people, or that was the plan. And so when they recognized me, or when they didn't really recognize me, but when they were visiting with me after the book fair, that I pulled off with a couple people's help, but essentially I went from being a helper to a leader, that I didn't know what I was doing. We brought in money. Well, the PTA president said, yeah, our goal was 15,000 or 1,500, but we only raised like 1,200 or something like that. And so guess what? I did not volunteer that next year, because it was in a public meeting, and basically I didn't meet the goal that I was supposed to know about, that I never knew about. So I was recognized for failure rather than success in a public way. So I didn't fuss or anything like that. I just said, oh, well, I wish I'd known what the goal was. And I think just getting through it this year was accomplishment for me, and not quitting because everybody else did something. And then I say deliver recognition, know your people. Some people like open and public, and some people like personal. So just know who your people are. Now, if you're doing an award ceremony, which, hopefully you're doing some kind of recognition for your volunteers, know that it's going to be a public way. But when you're doing that, make sure that there's a reason or a link to that recognition, and then tailor the recognition to the unique needs of the people involved. So when we recognized a volunteer, they loved planting trees. So we planted a tree in their honor as their part of recognition, and put a plaque up. So there's different ways that you can recognize those volunteers. We're Are there one or two people in the chat that want to just talk about any other ways? There's dozens of ways to really recognize those volunteers.
I'll just tell you what I'm doing. I can't get into many of my schools. So I'm doing leader packets, and we have a van that goes to all the different schools or whatever. So I'm just putting my, monthly newsletter in there. But I'm also putting some little sort of kind of candy or whatever in that manila envelope with, my leader packet every month. And so like this month I did milk duds, and I said, I would be a dud without your help as a volunteer. Thanks for being a great leader through, this time or whatever. And I've gotten more emails about just like 2 months ago, I put 3 types of mints in a plastic bag, and I said, you are meant to be a volunteer in Bienville Parish. But just those little things, I've gotten more emails about, thanks for the little candy or whatever. But just to let them know that I do care, and that I do appreciate them, even though I can't come in and I can't do anything with them really. So just a little something every month seems to be working.
Oh, good. Sometimes recognition is just noticing things and congratulating or recognizing people. And so you'll have a great presentation. Thank you, Megan. That was some good presentation on some of your recognition ideas. So when we talk about volunteer evaluation, what difference did the volunteers make? And this could be total for the program. As a result of volunteers, what programs did the volunteers offer, or what could we do that we weren't able to do because volunteers were part of it? And then what was some personal changes made? And then are there any stories to impact and document? Now, the evaluation of a volunteer could also be about their performance. It takes many forms, and I would tend to start out on the softer side of evaluation and then work my way up as you're a new agent, building that relationship and the trust with those volunteers. But provide feedback to them about the 4-H program, about their role in the 4-H program, help them understand. And then, if you're able to sit down and have an evaluation session about their performance, a lot of times listen more than you talk about what they're most proud of, and where they need help and how can you help them. And so it's more of a coaching session, but that evaluation part of the Isotope Model is really important in order to help the volunteer grow and to support the program. And then it's really easy to evaluate the 4-H program numerically. A lot of times it's nice to say $1 million worth, and you can go to the independent sector for the hourly value of a volunteer. And so how many hours did you serve? How many people did you reach? Did volunteers choose to extend their service in other ways? And did they recruit others as part of the program? So those are just some things that you can do from an overall standpoint with your volunteer program to communicate the value overall of the volunteer program in numbers. And then finally, we're going to end today and turn the program back over to Megan with just a wrap up. As you create your volunteer program, it's important to leave with the thought that volunteers spend their time where they feel rewarded, they gain self-esteem, they feel responsible and empowered, they experience growth, and they're satisfied. So as you move forward through this new agent orientation experience, really focus on creating a positive experience for those volunteers in your program so that they will want to stay and help make a difference in the lives of young people. So thank y'all very much, and I will turn the program back over to Megan.
All right, thank you, Dr. Fox. So, and I hope y'all understand that it's just a real treat having her today and talking about and providing an overview of volunteer development and of ISOCHR or ISOCHRs. I think she's probably got more knowledge of volunteer development in her pinky finger than I do in my entire body. So I just appreciate her sharing her knowledge and y'all for being so chatty, because we definitely want you to talk and to share feedback throughout. And so we've got about 18 minutes left. And so we're going to do now is we're going to spend about 10 minutes or so reviewing our voice article. So you'll be able to reflect a little bit more on the voice article, as well as this session today in your reflection. And so I think everybody seems to have read the article, and I'm just going to share the questions real quick on my screen. And I didn't open my actual, but do y'all see those questions? I'm going to copy them and share them in the chat. So what I want you to open with is, what did you think about the article and what stood out to you? So does anybody want to start us off? And I'm going to share the link as well in the chat so you guys have it. So what did you think about the article and what stood out to you? Does anybody want to share?
Hey, Megan, my microphone's kind of acting up. Can you hear me?
Yep.
I think that well, in my opinion, the article, it just, the way that it was written, it shows that, and it doesn't go back that far, but in terms of volunteering has been around for many, 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 many years. And the longer that a program goes, the longer that an agent is in place or multiple agents are in place, what I got from it was that it's really important to continue to build on your volunteer basis, no matter how big or small it is. And we've seen with, especially in our current times with COVID, that even if you have 100 volunteers, strive for 150 volunteers, because you don't know what's going to happen, what you're going to need, and at what point you'll need to call in that extra number. I got my phone ringing. I'm sorry. So let me just get my phone. Hold on one second. Hey, Miss Pam, I'm good. Okay, what's your email? And I'll send it to you in the next few minutes.
Does anybody want to share while Grant's on his call? Anybody else? Thoughts?
This is Megan.
Hey.
I feel like I've talked a whole lot today, but
Okay.
I mean, I thought it was good. I've been kind of familiar with this, just because I've been a volunteer, I guess. But it gave a lot of insight about how to actually recruit those volunteers. And it just made me think about, and I said this from the beginning, you know, I have some solid 4 or 5 solid volunteers that I can count on no matter what. But like 3 of those right now have COVID. So I'm down to like 2 solid volunteers. So, and I guess that's why I said what I said at the beginning. You know, I really need to expand my volunteers, and so it just gave me a lot of insight on how I can do that. So I enjoyed scanning it and, you know, kind of reading over it or whatever. So thank you.
Okay.
And like I said, I'm really sorry I've been chatty today. I don't know why.
I'm sorry. Yeah, that was rude of me to take a call, but I'm the only one in the office, so it's kind of, I couldn't just keep. That's like the 3rd time it rang, and I was gonna let it go, but I'm like, I can't. No. So kind of just to cut short, because I've talked a lot, kind of like Megan. But there was one part of it, and I was gonna pull it back up to see, but it was talking about just general kindness. I think that out of the entire article, there was a part that talked about just being kind enough to know your neighbor's name. So even for me, it kind of a light bulb went off, and I said, even if you've asked a parent to volunteer, even if they're that parent that sits in the car at every junior leader meeting, be kind enough to know their name and say hi, say bye. You don't know what they're going through. And I know this is a little off topic, but maybe they are super busy. Maybe they're just scared to volunteer. But whatever the case, be kind enough to know the people that you're working with. That was probably my biggest takeaway from this whole article. So, and Megan, that's probably not the takeaway that you meant for it to be, but that's kind of what I got from it. So, and thank y'all for this. And Dr. Fox, I don't know how many more calls you'll be on with us, but thank you for everything you've brought to our program. Thank you for your leadership. And as a first-year agent, you have really shown what it means to be a leader and a program leader overall. And I appreciate that. And good luck in all of your future endeavors. And you may be on the next call, so I'll have to say it again next week. But anyhow, good luck.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Megan and Grant, for that. Is there anybody else that has anything they want to share? Key takeaways, or something that stood out to them? Just one key point. Kind of quiet.
I kind of like briefly skimmed through the article, and just I guess as a GA, and just coming in and seeing what all about possibly being an agent is about. You know, I didn't realize how important it is to, you know, make sure your volunteers have a good training and resources and background when they're starting, and then recognizing them and how important that is in order for them to, you know, just stay and keep going on with your program, and you're not losing them. And I thought the article was really informative with that in this session as well. But also, I kind of saw like they were talking about how agents are like managers for volunteers, and just kind of like managing like who you have in your program. Okay, are they taken care of? Do they have what they need? You know, and I thought that was a really neat word for an agent as a manager. And that's something that kind of stood out to me when I was skimming through.
That's great, Sarah. Thank you. Dr. Fox, are you sharing? Sorry.
Well, like the dynamic relationship with the chart that they show in terms of the relationship between a volunteer and an agent, and how that is not stagnant but dynamic in terms of the authority of the volunteer and the degree of the volunteer participation related to the agent. So I like that it, we think about how we can work on empowering volunteers, and that gives us a graphic of how we can do that.
And kind of that section in particular, when I was originally reviewing the article, it stood out to me on that second page where it said, true involvement of an adult volunteer requires a special kind of commitment on the part of the agent, and to withhold certain information is a form of power. And talking about and this has also been discussed today, it's like giving your leader the information that they need to be successful, and then showing that participation kind of get greater as they get more power and more information. And I thought that was very, very interesting, related to what you were saying, Dr. Fox. But there's a lot. Oh, Megan's talking. Sorry.
Megan, where did you find that? Where it said true involvement? What page is that?
It's actually in the opening. Well, it says page 2, but there's an opening section. Let me show you on my screen. So right here on that page 2, I had highlighted that section. So that's where I read it. An average level of participation from leaders can be attained by your withholding decisions until consulting with your leader. So withholding average level, and then that moving along, the way I interpret it is like the more, and this is, I'm sorry that's, this direction, but like the more we delegate, the more we give them authority, the more they participate, the more they assume those leadership roles. And so I thought that was kind of critical. So those are on page 2 and 3 of the manuscript. So something that I really enjoyed reviewing for those that are looking at it online right now. So, all right, well, so you do have a reflection. So if you have other thoughts or ideas that you want to carry into that reflection that you can write in, that's great. We can continue the discussion in the next session, next week's session. But right now, what we're going to do is we're going to talk about preparing for next week in these last few minutes. So I'm going to go to my current slide. Thank you, Dr. Fox, for sharing that. All right, so preparing for next week, what we're going to do is we're going to complete a draft section of a volunteer management plan. So I'm going to give you a volunteer management plan snapshot, and you're going to just complete the first component, which is that identification and recruitment. And this is a draft. This is just you putting some thoughts out on paper and to start getting you to think about how you're going to identify and recruit. Then you're going to upload that draft, the first section, when you complete a reflection on the whole experience. So this includes your reading, the training today, and working on your actual plan. And then I have a link that I'm going to submit to you in an email. So you'll have that link where you can just complete the reflection and upload that piece of your volunteer management plan. And then for next Friday, the reading that you have is from the Journal of Extension. And this is, Charles Aber actually found this. And I know it says volunteer performance appraisal, but it's really focused on that interview and having that conversation with your volunteer to get feedback from them, to know what their needs are, to know where they fit, and then also, giving them the critical information they need to be successful. And it's not a relatively long article, but it is, research heavy. It's a good one. And I will send you the link for that one as well. And now I'm going to show you just a quick snapshot of that volunteer development plan, so you can kind of look at it, review it, show you what is due for next week. All right, so this is what I'm going to send you. And so what we try to do is put everything together on one visual so that you could kind of print it, work with it, develop it throughout these next few weeks. And this text in here is just some questions to kind of gauge your thoughts as you're typing, what your current needs are, what your goals, what actions will you take, when you're going to perform each action specific to each component. For next week, what you're going to do is just draft your identification and recruitment. So what are your current program needs? How are you going to recruit the volunteers to fill those roles? So just complete this first section that I've highlighted. And like I said, this is a draft. So you're going to, type your notes in here. And then within that reflection, there'll be a box for you to upload the actual document. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to look at it. I'm going to review it and then provide feedback and also know what gaps exist in the training. So if there's a misunderstanding or if you don't have the material you need to complete a specific section, we know that, okay, we have to gear or make changes to the training that next week to make sure that you have the information to complete your plan. So just this first section, put some notes in there, some ideas that you have, complete it and upload it with your reflection. And if you could do this by Tuesday, end of day, if you look at the reflection, like I said, it's just the 3 questions, uploading this first section of the plan. It's not a ton of work, but if you could do it by the end of the day Tuesday, then I'll have the opportunity to work with Sarah to review what you've completed before our session on Friday. So in saying that, does anybody have any questions? And like I said, I'm going to email this so you have those written instructions as well. So any questions? Is everybody clear? If you want to give me a thumbs up or say, yeah, I think I got it in the chat, just so I know we've been clear. Perfect. Okay. Awesome. Great. Good deal. All right. So, and then I'm going to email you. If you just don't understand the instructions, it's okay. Just shoot me a message back after I send you the link. And I will work with you to make sure you know what you need to do before our session on Friday. Saying that, it is noon, and so it's time for us to go. I know you all are, probably hungry for lunch. And just so, if you could give a big virtual round of applause to Dr. Fox for sharing her expertise with us today. Like I said before, it's a real treat to have her. We're all going to miss her. And then also pat yourself on the back, y'all, for being conversational today, to providing ideas and, sharing throughout, because that's really what's going to make these sessions informative and give you the information you need to draft a successful volunteer management plan. So thank you all so much. All right.
Thank you, Megan.
Thank y'all. Have a great Friday.
Thanks. See y'all next week.